Well, here is what we have going on today. It is the day after Christmas, and the scenery really hasn't changed here in the shop since the last video. We did do the brakes prior to pulling the chopper in the shop on this 7200, and we had a weather event come in here. Friday afternoon. We got wind and cold temperatures and everything. We worried about the power going out, so we ended up hooking tractors to generators. Needless to say, the power did not go out. This generator here we use on the heifer barns across the road. I put a new tire on here a while ago and the bead is leaking. So we're going to take that off in there. I tried to get an inner tube today, but the tire shop wasn't open. That I went to, and we're just going to try to seal it up with some grease and see if we can get that bead to seat on that. We've also got a skid steer tire that haunted us on, well, it was yesterday. I had it flattened in the same position the day before Christmas. I fixed it. I thought it was just the bead on that, and you can kind of see that this rim is bent up just a little bit, and it was flat here yesterday morning. Now, if we weren't dealing with single-digit temperatures, maybe that rubber would have stayed sealed around the rim. So as long as we're on a tire topic, I've got another one to do on this 326 skid steer. We ran the first set of tires on this skid steer. We foam filled them. So we ran solid tires. Well, I guess they're not really solid tires. We figured we would not foam fill again. We had these filled with some kind of sealant, and we do not have a spare for this skid steer. This takes 14 17.5s or 14 17s or something like that. We don't have a spare for it. We run 1000 16.5s on the little skid steers, and we have one skid steer that runs a 12.5 16.5. So Jared's been working on this diller tanker, and he has installed some lights on the front corner. I put back ones on this a long time ago so that we could get backed into where we were loading from, but anymore it is hard to see when you bring the load boom back over to the hole there. So he's got one on each side. He's got one up on top. He has the inside of the tank pretty much ready for paint. We need to get these tubes in there, the hydraulic lines that run down through the tank. Now, we didn't talk about that much the other day as far as why our lines ran through the tank. Well, a couple of reasons. One, it's easier to run them down through the center of the tank, and they use the manure to help cool the oil. Whether or not that really works, I'm not really too sure. The newer ones, they're putting the lines on the outside. Oil traveling that far should be pretty cool, or cooled down by the time it gets to the front of the trailer. One of the other projects that I'm going to try to tackle today is getting this chopper finalized. We're still waiting for a part for it, and there was a couple of other small things that I wanted to do to it, and one of them was we need to replace the smooth roll scraper. I've got a new scraper to go on there, and we've also got a cordless or a wireless camera on the spout that the guys can see from a display that they have in the trucks. The other camera that's on this chopper is hardwired right into the display in the chopper, which that's a better way to go but you need the wireless camera so that these guys can see the camera that's on the spout and the display that they have in the truck, and that's not working. We need to replace that, and I've got a flasher on the other side that's bothering as well. Now, I've had quite a few of you ask about these little trucks and how they've been. They've been real good. However, I went to get in this truck the other night and it would not start. It was down around 0, and I'm gonna go ahead and try to replace the battery in it today. Jared is talking about putting a Group 31 in his, but I think just a slightly larger battery than what's in there. And I would probably have to say that the battery that's in it is, the size is fine. It just needs to be replaced. So we don't know how old that battery is, and I could show you what Jared's rig looks like. He has a generator mounted right in the back of his, along with a toolbox, and he's carrying around about 600 pounds of weight, 500 to 600 pounds of weight in the back of it. He uses the generator to plug block heaters in on equipment or tractors, what have you, trucks that aren't parked near an outlet. And then he's got this toolbox in here, and it's been nice to run around and work on things with it. So we better get to working on a couple of tires here, and then we can get on our other projects. Well, we've got this one dismounted, and like I said, there was something put in these to work as a sealant if a nail went into it or whatever. So far the stuff has worked pretty good because it almost lasted for the whole set of tires here. We'll put new tires on it in the spring. Money's a little tight right now, so we're gonna have to get this stuff cleaned up out of there. It's kind of nasty looking down in there. Stuff is green, almost looks like manure, but we'll get that cleaned out, and then we've got to kind of search around this tire to make sure there's no objects in it, because that's just going to ruin the tube. I do see on this rim it's bent right there. That might not help things none too much, but we need to at least get it cleaned up. All right, we've got all this stuff cleaned out of the tire. We've went around the tire a bunch of times. I do not feel any objects poking through into the inside of the tire. Now that stuff, you want to get everything cleaned out of a tire before you put a tube in. Even if you leave a decal on a tube, you know, like the sticker or what have you on there, it'll actually ruin the tube. Now we've got this rim cleaned up too, and more or less what happened here is this tire went, it probably got soft, being that it was cold, as cold as it was, it lost all its air, and then they drove around until they got the job done, because all of our guys are overachievers. They won't quit until they get the job done. So working with a skid steer, for example, if they get a soft tire, they're gonna run it until it's right down flat. They'll get the job done. They'll get the machine down to the shop. Usually they ruin the tire. Sometimes they ruin the rim. So yes, they are overachievers. They go until the job is done. Their women will say otherwise, but that's a story for another day. So we're gonna go ahead and get the rim mounted into the tire, and I've got a tube that I'm gonna throw in there, and we can send this out the door. Like I said, we're gonna replace these tires come springtime. Well, we have our tube installed into this 14-17-5, and that's sitting up nice and purty there. I went ahead and dismounted the tire off this rim that was for the 318G skid steer. Now this skid steer had heavy duty skid steer tracks on it, or you know, skid steer traction tires. These are a Camso SKS 532. We've run the Camso SKS 753, I believe it is. They've got like an S pattern to them. We haven't had the greatest luck with them. However, we've had the best luck with this tread design right here. This is a Galaxy Hulk. And you could just see the amount of rubber that's on this tire. That is the same size or same kind of tire that this one is. You could see that this one is about wore out, but it's still got quite a bit of sidewall tread left here, which doesn't do a lot for you, but it's enough to keep you going. These tires here, just a regular skid steer tire or skid steer tread doesn't last us at all. We can get about 300 to 500 hours out of a set of those. Even the better skid steer bar design, which that's what that one is. However, these Galaxy Hulks, we get anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 hours, and that is on a machine that is on the concrete all day long. So we're gonna go ahead and get this one mounted. We're gonna go ahead and tube it. Most tires are tubeless when you get it from the factory, but every time we put a set of skid steer tires on, we put tubes in them. And the reason why we do that is because these numbskulls here, they'll bump a curb or something, they'll bend the rim, like I was talking about earlier. The tire will lose all the wind, but they'll keep going. And these tires here are $300 and some a piece. You don't care if a guy runs the tire, that tire flat, because it's about junk, but usually they do it on those tires there. And you wouldn't believe the look on their face when they hit a curb. They go ahead and they get done with what they're doing, and they walk around the side of the machine and they look at the tire and they're like, oh my God, mucho good. Machine is not broken. But you see the rim is all opened up. You can almost stick your hand inside there. So the tubes help us. That tire there, I've got to do something with sealing the bead. Might be able to get away with just putting a little bit of grease around the outside, and that one might be good. So let's go ahead and get this one mounted. Well, Jared's got his lights powered up. He's trying to aim them best he can. Now he wanted to make sure I corrected myself or corrected you guys. And these lights are not for bringing the swing boom back, but it's so that he can see the load hole. And speaking of lights, we've got these lights here in the shop that are garbage. And we need to maybe change them to LED. The ballasts are shot. It's not the bulbs, which I don't think anyways. There's 6 bulbs in each one, and there's 3 ballasts. Each ballast controls 2 bulbs, and most of the lights have a pair of bulbs out on them. So we've got 4 out on that one, 2 out on that one, 2 over there, 4 there, 6 here, and it's starting to look like a dungeon working in this building. And these lights are not that old. This is the second set of lights that have been put in this building here. We've had 3 or 4 sets of lights put in this one. So it'd be an easy job. We can just unhook them, unplug them, pull them down, and change them over. All right, we've got our tube installed. However, these tires here are a little bit of a mongrel to get put on. It takes 2 men and a small boy sometimes in order to get it on there. So You're gonna see me struggle with this one. I've got these, these are bead holders that'll kind of hold the tire on the rim there, and sometimes that's what we have to use in order to get these old guys to go on the rim. Now that we've got our camera going, you probably won't see me struggle much, but usually they are a struggle. All right, we'll just get this guy aired up. Now this is what you never should do when you're mounting a tire. You should never leave it standing upright with the hose going into it, because if that tips over, it's going to break that valve stem. But for the purpose of the video here, we need to show you how not to do something. So we'll put 50 pounds in this, and then we will call it good, and we'll work on this generator tire here. All right, so we've got our tires mounted up. That one's ready to go on a skid steer. And then this generator tire here, we're gonna leave it for a few hours. I don't like putting grease around everything, because sometimes if it doesn't work, you got a lot of crap to clean up. But I went ahead and put 55 pounds of air in that guy there, and we'll check it in a few hours to see how it's doing. I broke the bead down on each side. I didn't take it off. I just popped the bead, put some grease in there. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna rip this battery out of this guy and see if Napa can match us up something that's a little bigger, that has maybe a few more cold cranking amps, and we'll see if we can't get something in there that's going to be something that'll keep this old girl starting all winter long. Well, we've got this battery out, and it does have some English writing on here, but it also has some Chinese on there as well, and then there's some Chinese writing on top. So why don't we go ahead and load test this, see what it does. We've got it hooked up. Well, that's weak. It's running, see, it's down 11.5 volts, and we load test it, and she says she is weak. We should be up over 12 volts. 12.4 to 12.6 is where it should be. Probably the battery, that same size battery would probably be okay. So we'll run down to Napa and see if they can get us matched up and get a new battery. We've also got another project here, but we'll talk about it once we get started on it. We've got some, I don't know if this is 3/8, that's probably 1/2 inch rebar here that we've got to do a small project with, and we'll get on that in a little while here after we get our battery. Well, I thought I would do a walkthrough of the barn addition here. They had just poured concrete last week, and they put some rubber in on that drover's alley and on the crossover here. So I thought I would walk through this addition before we end up getting cows in here. My brothers have been working on getting the alley scrapers in on this section here, and we've got a different set of alley scrapers cleaning that end of the barn there, and then on this side of the barn we're cleaning that with a vac truck. So this is a Himiway alley scraper barn cleaning unit. We had these left over from and when, or before we ended up adding on to this end of the barn here. We ended up putting larger alley scraper units in back when that got done a couple years ago. So we'll just kind of show you what this drover's alley looks like. They poured the concrete, like I said, last week. We had stalls in where this is crossing over. My brothers ripped them out. I think there's maybe 14 stalls or so that got ripped out so that we could get cows from this side of the barn here across and down through the drover's alley, so that we don't have to disrupt the rest of the barn. They can get to and from the parlor. We'll kind of take a walk up through there, but this is where the addition started, right here. So it went from there down through, and then a couple years ago we had this section here added on. A few weeks ago, I had done a video on this a while ago, but my brothers ended up ripping out the stalls, that the head-to-head stalls right here in the middle, and then the perimeter wall stalls, they ripped them out so that the cows could access the other side of the barn through here. And then we had the rubber company come in and they put the rubber down, and then we weren't able to put the alley scrapers in until after the rubber got put down, because the corner wheel bolts down through where the rubber is laid. So we'll just take a walk down through this drover's alley here. I know I had somebody ask me roughly how wide this alleyway is here, and it's 12 feet wide. It's not really wide enough. You could maybe turn a skid steer around if it didn't have a bucket on it. But it's as wide as it needs to be. And then this is built on the exterior wall of the barn. This is the actual edge of the building here, and then this here was added onto. So we've got a way to get cows from that section of the barn over and across, or not that section of the barn, this section right here. So this group right here, we can get through this drover's alley as well, and then we don't have to disrupt the other end of the barn here. They've ripped a couple of stalls out on this perimeter wall here too, and then someday if we want to, we could make a crossover to go across the feed alley to get to that side of the barn. So this hooks into the connecting building, and they have been using this drover's alley here to get the cows out of this section that we just walked past. In the past, what we've had to do, we could milk this in a couple of different groups because the holding area doesn't hold only so many cows. So we would leave one side of the barn, we would bring them up and then return the cows to the feed alley and have the stall section waiting and so on and so forth, but that created a problem. So this is the connecting building here, and this just goes down into the parlor, and then the crossover to get to the other side of the barn is right there, so we can get the other side of the barn through the crossover and down through the connecting building. So they're pumping manure right now. We had a heck of a time getting going. Frac tank was froze. Trucks didn't want to get going too awful good today. After we come off that cold spell, it made for a pain in the butt. Down through here, we've got some cleanup to do yet. We're waiting on some more gates here as well. Just entering back into the old addition that was added on to a couple of years ago. We got to put gates up across them doorways, so on and so forth. And then this is the crossover here to get to the other side of the barn. So this side is full of bred heifers. Now we're just coming in out of the older addition here to where this year's addition started, which would be right here. So I just thought I'd do a quick walkthrough just to kind of show you what things look like before this other side gets full of cows here. And we'll get back down to the shop and get back to work here. So the alley scraper that's on this side of the barn will pull manure from where the addition, well, just past where the addition started. It'll pull manure to this end, and it'll dump in this manure slot for the pit that's in this section of the barn. The alley scrapers that are on the other end are pulling manure from that other direction there. You could kind of hear where the tractor was running. That's where the pit goes underneath the barn right there. This is where this pit is. This pit's right here. It goes all the way across, dumps outside, and it starts from right there. So these alley scrapers run back and forth on them cables there, so it'll pull the manure down, dump it in the slot. You can see that one there where that one is set. That one would have been just getting done dumping, and then it'll turn around, it'll pull that one backwards, and the one that's on this side will start coming forwards to dump in the slot. It takes about, well, a run this long would take about 40 minutes to make a full revolution. In other words, to clean one side. So every hour and a half or so it's making a full loop. So we'll go ahead and get down to the shop. There's Timmy loading out a load of manure. He's trying his best to keep that tank clean. No messes yet. What the heck?
I'm just counting the loads.
You're counting the loads?
I just gotta get at least one more than you got.
That's right. How many loads did I get? Have you counted them?
No, I know I got a ways to go, so I'm not even gonna walk.
Yeah, well, how'd physical therapy go?
Huh?
How'd physical therapy go today?
I wonder why I go there.
Oh, really?
I do the same thing at home.
Yeah.
Now, until we progress, they'll show me new things I can do, but...
Tim had an operation on his elbow. What did you have, ligaments or something?
Called a distal bicep tendon.
Oh.
The muscle, the bicep connected to the lower bone here, came off.
Doing a lot of heavy duty left-handed work, right?
You know, I just get, my muscles are so big and strong, you know, when I pull it right off the bone. You know?
There you go.
So now they drill a hole through your bone, cut your tendon, pull it down through the bone, wire it in there. Kind of a neat thing.
Yeah. Everybody's been asking where you've been. They're glad to see you back.
I'm back. Look out.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we ended up taking our battery down to Napa. They are searching for a battery that's going to fit into that truck. Now we came back, we put the tire on the generator. That seems to be holding there. And we kicked that out the door. Now we are working on this chopper, and we've got this smooth roll scraper here. There's 5 bolts that hold it in. We're gonna pull it out. And we've got a new one here sitting on the head that we're gonna go ahead and put on there. Just a basic swap out here is all. So we'll go ahead and get the new one in there. And yeah, so that's what that looks like. We've got some stuff to clean out from behind there, and then we'll be able to close this up. Well, we've got the chopper done. We've got this smooth roll scraper installed. We've got that in there, and I ended up getting my lights fixed. I'll show you the parts on the bench. I didn't get the damn camera out, but this flasher on this arm here did not work. One day I went to change the bulb, put a new bulb in there, still didn't work. Can't really test anything. As soon as you unplug the plug, that light quits. So I figured that there's probably a wire somewhere on the chopper that involved the light on this side. The one in the fender worked, but the one on the arm did not. And I dealt with that for all of corn silage, 4th cutting, and so on. As soon as you would turn the flashers on or turn the directional on or something, it would give you a warning on the display. It would beep all crazy, and it was just annoying. Well, what it was is there was a broken wire. You guys run a combines, that's the same light that's on the header, and it's got a pigtail on there about 6 inches long. And it kind of folds the wire in there a little goofy like. And it actually had the wire broke right at the plug. This black wire here was broken, and it was not getting a connection. So I cut them, and I ended up wiring them in direct. And I had a couple other spots on the wire that wasn't all that great. For how old the chopper is, I can't believe that the wires were in the shape that they were in. A couple of the screws broke that hold the light together as well. So we've got the smooth roll scraper. This is the old one here. That's what we replaced. This is just the back side, but it's got the ends are wore off a little bit more, or the centers wore a little, I don't know. It's just out of shape a little bit. So we've got one project left to do for a friend of mine, Greg, and I'll tell you the story about how I met him towards the end of this video, but this is one last project that we have to do, and we have to make some he traps coyotes and whatever, and he wants handles made to release the trap. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Jared's been working on that green diller. He's got some work lights put on there so that he can see the tanker when we're loading at night. And another thing he's putting on there is a float gauge to tell him when the tank gets full. This is the same gauge setup that he put on the frac tank. Now on the frac tank, he wired it in and put 2 strobe lights on either corner of the frac tank, and then when the tank gets up to about a foot from the top, this thing floats in the manure, and it's got something inside it. It must knock it one way or the other or something, and it closes the circuit and it turns the light on. He's not going to be putting beacons on the tanker. He's going to put lights on there. This light here. What are you going to put? One on each side?
One on each side and 2 on the back.
So he'll have these lights, because we've got several different places that we load. Sometimes you're on the left side of the tanker. Sometimes you're on the right side of the tanker, and sometimes all you can see is the back of the tanker. So that's why he's going to have two, right? Two in each location, or one on each side and two in the back?
Side and two on each side in the back. So there'll be 4 in the back.
Left and right on the back, and then
one on each side.
Rear corner on each side, and then that way we can keep the tanks from getting dirty. What we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the tanks as clean, all of our tanks as clean as Tim can keep them. So Tim is trying to beat my record when I hauled while he was hurt. I told him to count the loads. He said it'd take him too long to count them, but he said it's going to be a while. So that's what he's doing to that. We'll show you in the next video what that looks like. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into cutting this rebar up. And funny story about Greg. The first time I met him, I was doing a live stream one night, combining corn near where he lives. And I was talking about, boy, it'd be nice to get a coffee. And I was down on Browsing, that dead end road there, you know. Yeah. And I'm combining along, and this guy comes down in on a 4-wheeler. And he's got a fresh cup of coffee. He only lives a half a mile up on the other side of Town Line Road there. So he brought a coffee down, rode me in the combine for a while, and that was how I met him. And then, I don't know, did you go down to his house or was it the other guys to get the heating oil? He ended up changing a furnace or something. He says, hey, I'm going to be putting a new furnace in, but I've got some heating oil left. Do you want it? I said, yeah, I'll take it, because we could use that in the oil burner in the shop here. So, there was a little bit more in his tank than he thought, and the guys went down with that diaphragm pump. They pumped his tank out for him, then they took his tank up out of the salt, carried the tank up out of the cellar for him, and we had, I don't know, there must have been 120 gallons of diesel fuel that we ran through that heater that winter. So we'll go ahead and we'll start cutting these up. We'll show you what these look like. I think we took the diaphragm pump down there. I don't know. I don't know how we got the fuel out of his tank, but at any rate, yeah. So we'll start cutting these up and we'll show you what they look like. Well, we've got our pieces all cut. We had two 10-foot lengths. He wants these 30 inches long. We ended up with 7 30-inch pieces, and then out of what was left, we were able to make our handles. And the handles are 4 1/4 inches long. So what we're going to do is we're just going to weld these right to the top, and then he can go down in to release the trap with that handle. Real simple job. We'll go ahead and get these welded up quick. We'll let him know we got these done for him. And then I'm going to run along to Charlotte's game. She has a Christmas break tournament. She's got one game tonight, game tomorrow night. So let's get these welded up and we'll show you what they look like. Well, we've got these little guys done. That's what they look like all together, all welded together, and then he can reach down in and do whatever he's got to do to release his traps. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this guy closed up. We can get the head on the chopper here, and then we can get ready for our next project. As you can see, I threw some paint on this. Makes things look a lot better when you go into the season here. And you got everything nice and green. We didn't have to do much to the front end of the chopper here. last year we replaced the, I don't know if they call it the anvil or what, that goes down in below the shear bar. I can't remember if I put a smooth roll scraper on it last year or not. Kaz ended up putting 2 brand new feed rolls in here, the top one and the bottom one. If you recall, back in the summertime, we put a new magnet in that bottom one. And I said, you know what? I'm not gonna replace these feed rolls again this year. I've had them replaced 2 years in a row now. As far as the battery goes for this little truck, Napa's got one. They're gonna be dropping it off here in a little while. I gotta wrap things up here and get to Charlotte's game. So with that being said, that is gonna do it for this one. I want to thank you for watching, and we will catch you at the next video.